Hi students, previously in this series we talked a little bit about how to make sure that you're synthesizing your research for the paper rather than just summarizing it. And in this video we're going to talk a little bit more about how to incorporate research effectively into your paragraphs by discussing one particular strategy that we'll be calling the quote sandwich. So let's get to it. For those of you following along, you may have gathered that I like a good analogy. So for this lesson, let's talk about a grilled cheese sandwich because your quote or your paraphrase is kind of like the cheese in your sandwich. And while melted cheese on its own is lovely, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I will literally eat any kind of cheese. It's still not a grilled cheese sandwich. So you want to make sure that you nestle your cheese between two perfectly toasted pieces of bread. And that's kind of what you want to do with your quote or your paraphrase. You want to make sure that you introduce that quote in some way and that you then comment on that quote. You don't want to just kind of leave it out there swimming on its own. So let's look at a couple of examples of how to make sure that your quote or your paraphrase is nicely kind of padded within your paragraph. Quick refresher, in our last lesson, we were using the sample topic of social media and arguing that social media should be better regulated. And one of the reasons for that, one of the subtopics, was because of the spread of misinformation. So let's say that this is the beginning of our body paragraph on that, just the first 3 sentences. Perhaps the most concerning impact of unregulated social media is the spread of misinformation, which is often used to manipulate the public. This is not a new phenomenon. Extremist gangs have been involved in using social media sites like Facebook and Twitter for propagating their ideology and recruitment of individuals. The algorithm makes it difficult to avoid dangerous content once a user has already clicked on something deemed extremist, making it easy for conspiracy theories to spread. So let's take a look at what's been done here. I opened with my topic sentence that introduces the subtopic here about the issue of spreading misinformation. Then I've got a quick little sentence that helps to introduce the quote that I'm going to be incorporating. This is not a new phenomenon. And then the quote starts to talk about that phenomenon. Extremist gangs have been involved in using social media sites like Facebook and Twitter for propagating their ideology. I can't just leave it there and move on to the next point. I need to say something about this point. The algorithm makes it difficult to avoid dangerous content once a user has already clicked on something deemed extremist. So I'm sort of further explaining how these extremist gangs have been able to use these social media sites to spread that ideology because the way the algorithm works makes it easy for them to do so. Now I'm ready to move on to another point from my research that I could incorporate into here, or I could continue talking about this for a bit longer if I wish to. Another example. You may recall another previous lesson on developing our body paragraphs in which our sample topic was about decreasing childhood obesity, and one of the subtopics for that was the argument that we should regulate the quality of public school foods as one of the ways to decrease childhood obesity. We had developed a whole body paragraph on that. This is only part of that paragraph, but you can see the way that the quotes and the paraphrases are incorporated in here. The government needs to regulate the quality of public school foods so that American schools provide lunches and snacks that are low in fat and high in nutritional value. Shands and Beck found that children who buy lunch at schools are more likely to be obese than those who eat lunches prepared at home. This suggests that schools are making very little effort to provide students with healthy food options in their lunch staples. Eliminating unhealthy lunch foods would go a long way towards promoting positive eating habits in children. According to Mass, Neyman, and Naylor, school-based nutrition policies have resulted in less access to sugar-sweetened beverages and low-nutrient energy-dense foods in schools, which has reduced consumption of these unhealthy foods. Because children spend so much of their daily lives at school, availability of unhealthy food in schools is directly related to their consumption. Now in this case, so far, we've got 2 quote sandwiches. We opened with our topic sentence that introduces the idea of regulating the quality of public school foods. And that topic sentence actually already works as kind of the opener for my first piece of research. And the first bit here is paraphrased rather than quoted, but it's the same idea. Schanzenbach found that children who buy lunch at schools are more likely to be obese than those who eat lunches prepared at home. Now you'll notice that this is already evidence of what my topic sentence says. Now I've still got a comment on that. This suggests, in other words, what I just paraphrased, suggests that schools are making very little effort to provide good food. Now I want to introduce another quote, and I'm following along with the same line of logic here. Eliminating unhealthy lunch foods would go a long way towards promoting positive eating habits in children. And now my quote is a study proving that it is doing that when we eliminate those foods. According to these guys, school-based nutrition policies have resulted in less access to sugar-sweetened beverages, which reduce consumption of those unhealthy foods for the kids. Once again, just because I've introduced it doesn't mean I can leave it on its own. I never want to close a paragraph with a quote. So let's close out the sandwich. Because children spend so much of their daily lives at school, availability of unhealthy food in schools is directly related to their consumption. So I'm saying this finding in the research makes total sense because children are at school all the time. A lot of the food that they eat is at school. And so if there's healthier food in school, then that's going to reduce their overall consumption of unhealthy foods. So you can see two examples here of how those quotes or paraphrases are nicely nestled within information that helps to both introduce it and expand upon it. Again, this is not the whole body paragraph, so you would continue doing this regardless of how much research you are actually including. So it probably goes without saying that you never want to open a body paragraph with a quote or paraphrase or close a body paragraph with a quote or paraphrase. You want to make sure throughout the body paragraph that you are always introducing and commenting on each bit of information from your research. So just try to follow the quote sandwich model as a kind of formula until it sort of becomes second nature for you. Now, although we're calling it the quote sandwich, these are not all going to be quotes in your paper. A lot of them are going to be paraphrases, and so that's actually our next lesson. See you there.